All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Oh, wait, we're waiting for Councillor Stewart. Hang on for a second. We'll just give Councillor Stewart another second. I don't know if Councillor Radwan is coming on virtually or not. I think she was going to try to get on with us.
I'm here, Mayor.
You are there, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Oh, perfect. All right, well, let's get rolling. Welcome to Monday, March 18th meeting of the Common Council of the City of St. John. And we're going to start this evening off with a land acknowledgement. And tonight, the deputy is going to read that land acknowledgement. So over to you, Deputy McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. The land on which the city of St. John, or Manicwist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatamaquati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause and reflect.
Okay, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, City Clerk, next item, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next on the agenda is item 2.1, approval of minutes of March the 4th.
Minutes of March the 4th. Councillor Killen and Councillor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And next is 2.2, approval of minutes of March 11th.
March 11th minutes. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is the approval of the agenda, 2 items being added from Committee of the Whole. Item 17.1, catalytic multipurpose recreational facility, and 17.2, lease termination at City Market.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve the agenda with the added items. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is the consent agenda. Disclosures of conflict of interest. My
Disclosure of conflict of interest. Councillor Killen, over to you.
Yep, just item 17.2, please.
17.2 for Councillor Killen. Okay, next item.
Next is the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, over to you, Deputy, for the consent agenda, please.
5.1 to what? Sorry, Your Worship, I'm not able to get online here, but I'll move 5.1 to 5.10 inclusive, please.
5.1 to 5.10, I'll take a seconder on that. Counselor Stewart on the question. Counselor Harris, over to you.
I'd like to go 5.10 for broader discussion.
5.10, okay. So that's 5.9 then, Counselor. 5.9, and who's my seconder? Counselor Stewart, we're good with that, 5.1 to 5.9? We move, okay. All right, so on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. I want to say really briefly about these items. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all community development funding agreements. Just for the public's information, the first one is Marketplace West Park Revitalization Project. Number 2 is the Forest Hills Playground. Number 3 is the Harbor Passage Stairs. Number 4 is Rockwood Park Redevelopment Project Phase 3. And number 5 is the Reversing Falls Trail, the look-off and access, which are those wooden stairs that we've been complaining about for the last couple of years, and the look-off. So when we look at approximately 40% of the costs that are going to be provided by RDC for the community development funding agreements, their share will add up to $1,139,600. So I would just want to say thank you to the province and RDC. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next is item 6, members' comments.
Members' comments. Okay. See who I got up first for members' comments. Members' comments? All right, I'm going to go first in this case. So I've just got a couple of little things I wanted to mention. On March the 5th, I think it was, I went for a candlelight vigil for Next Benedict. And there was a little note put out by our 2S LGBTQIA plus community of St. John and its allies, and they invited everyone to celebrate and honor the life of Next Benedict, a 16-year-old non-binary Indigenous person from Oklahoma. They passed away after being brutally beaten in a school washroom. I felt terrible when I read that. And I just thought, is this what our society's coming to when a 16-year-old gets beat up in a washroom to death? I mean, is the death penalty now? Is that what we get for just being different? So we need to correct this as a society. This is crazy. This is a war we can fight. This is a war we can win. This should never, ever happen. All right, my next item is a little cheerier. My next item, I got a lovely letter from Margaret Gordon, who turned 100 last month, and she just wanted to thank council and thank the councilors for attending. And she said that counselor, she says, you should be very proud of your work that is being finished in the South End. It's late coming, that's Margaret, but it's worth it. And I want to say thank you to everyone, and for myself and from my family, I'm very grateful and will always cherish the City Council. So I thought that was a nice note from Margaret for us. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is I just wrote a little bit of a story here that there are many movers and shakers, I have to read it, in the world, who seek to alter the status quo, who induce change, who think strategically, all while looking at the impacts on our future. We recognize these leaders, but sometimes they come with the gear of a marine mechanic who has been described as a wizard with a wrench. And I'm speaking of Gifford Garnett Cook, and he was born in 1938 and he died March the 3rd, 1924. And I'm taking a quote from his obituary: from an underlying family passion for the sea and dating back 6 generations of fishing in the waters off the Bay of Fundy, he and his 2 sons waded into the fish farming business in 1985 with a vision to work smarter and relying on science and experts to ensure sustainability and a decrease in a carbon footprint. They evolved into a global seafood company leader. So I got some of this information off the website. They're now in they're now in 9 countries. They harvest more than 25 core species of fish. They employ over 20,000 people worldwide. They have 14 family companies, but here's the best part, is they're based in St. John, New Brunswick, and that's something that we should be proud of here. And so to the Cook Aquaculture Inc. family, I just want to recognize Mr. Cook's loss, and I want to send our sincere condolences to the family. All right, Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. Last week, many in the city celebrated St. Patrick's Week. It kind of makes sense for those of us who are descended from Ireland that we started the week raising the flag in the rain and finished the week yesterday in a negative wind chill as the wind blew at us at St. Patrick's Square off the bay. But I do want to highlight Marika Block, who has been very active in the Irish Canadian Cultural Association in St. John, was the guest speaker at the St. Patrick's Society, kind of leads things at the memorial at St. Patrick's Square. Shared some information with us, not only on the history of the Irish in St. John, but a little bit about the future. So Ireland has an Office of Immigration that looks after the Irish who have gone away to other places. And they have a project where they are going to be, on behalf of Ireland, placing bronze shoes, which is a symbol of good journeys, at the pathway into North America. So we are on the list along with St. John's, Montreal, Miramichi, but certainly St. John and Partridge Island for a visit in the next year or two from some dignitaries from Ireland to place a memorial and honor that we are part of the pathway. So as much as we honor our past, we can look forward to a visit in the future as well. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your words about Next Benedict, because now I'm the same way, just like you immediately tear up when you think about it. And so I just wanted to mention the Fred Talk event that we were at, Councillor Harris and I, this weekend in Fredericton, where people came together across the province to talk about innovation and inclusion for trans folks and trans people's rights. And we heard a 50-year-old, just turned 50, Ella Mullen, née Doug Mullen, and they grew up in the Pentecostal church, very, very strict, but, you know, are here today, proudly trans, proudly out, and gave a beautiful speech about what that means that New Brunswick has accepted them and has celebrated them. And yes, there are challenges, but the more we talk about this, and so it's really meaningful that you just did that, because the more we share the acceptance of folks, the less people will die. And so I want to thank Arthur Taylor, who came and brought us up there to represent St. John. Deputy Mayor Greg Erickson was there. There were folks from Moncton there, folks from Miramichi. It was like, you know, as much as there's all of this talk out there of these very negative things, I think there's a lot of people going in the other direction, and it's very meaningful to see people live into their 50s who are trans. And I think that's so important to see. And anyway, thank you for doing that. That's really meaningful.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, Mayor, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. I didn't see the yellow line around you. Sorry, up there. Councillor
That's
Redwan,
okay.
over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to you and Councillor Killen. Everybody should feel like they belong in our community. I just wanted to wish everybody Ramadan Mubarak for anybody who's celebrating like me. And I also wanted to make mention there's actually an interfaith iftar coming up that the Westside Mosque is putting on. And they're actually doing it over at the Exhibition Park. It was a huge event last year. And I know council has been invited to go. But I love this because I really want everybody to attend. And you don't have to be celebrating Ramadan. You don't have to be fasting. You can wear whatever you want. Everybody's welcome. And it's a free event, but you do have to get tickets online. And if anybody has any questions, they can just reach it. It's actually Friday, March the 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Exhibition Park.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, City Clerk, we'll go to the next item.
Thank you. Next, we have a proclamation on the agenda, item 7.1, and this is for Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness.
Whereas Purple Day is a global effort dedicated to promoting epilepsy awareness in countries around the world. And whereas epilepsy is one of the most common neurological conditions estimated to affect over 50 million people worldwide, and 42 people in Canada are diagnosed daily. And whereas 1 in 10 persons will have at least one seizure during his or her life, and whereas the public is often unable to recognize common seizure types or how to respond with appropriate first aid, and whereas Purple Day will be celebrated on March 26th annually to increase understanding, reduce stigma, and improve the quality of life for people with epilepsy throughout the country and globally, therefore I, now Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim March the 26th, 2024 as Purple Day in the City of St. John in an effort to raise awareness of epilepsy in Canada. Thank you. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Thank you. Next item is 10.1 on the agenda, and this is for a proposed municipal plan amendment at 241 to 281 Douglas Avenue. And as council will recall, a public presentation was made for this item on February 5th, 2024. Since that time, the required advertising has been completed by the clerk's office, and public notice was given for the application. You will see that all the information on this is included in your council kit, including any letters received. At this point, if council wishes, it may now choose to refer this matter to the Planning Advisory Committee for a report and recommendation and authorize the necessary advertising with a public hearing to be held on Monday, May 13th in council chamber at 6:30. Or council may choose not to proceed with the proposed amendment process and adopt a resolution to deny this application.
Okay, I'll take a motion to send it to PAC. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 10.2, and this is a zoning bylaw amendment at 1 Bayard Drive.
Okay, I'm sending this over to Acting Director Dobbelstein.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you for third reading is an application for rezoning that was submitted by Jill Higgins for the property located at 1 Bayard Drive. The application is seeking to rezone the property to enable the conversion of a former office building into a multi-unit, multi-building residential project. The application received first and second reading on March 4th, 2024, following the required public hearing. And I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and the item is now before you to move forward with third reading.
I'll pass that over to you, City Clerk, for the motions.
Thank you. Only 2 motions required on this file. Approve the third reading by title, and a second motion to approve first is to approve the third reading by entirety, and second motion is to approve third reading by title.
Okay, approve third reading in entirety. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 15th day of December 2014, is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John, by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 2,737 square meters located at 1 Bayard Drive, also identified as PID 000-15610, from major community facility to urban center residential.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Councillor Ogden, is your light on? Okay. I'll call the vote then. I've got all in favor. Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor
I think
Ogden?
this is a great news story, and I would say to all developers, we still got lots of land out there in the city, and St. John is open for business, so please come in and see us, and we'll treat you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
And next is item 10.3. And this is a traffic bylaw amendment, Topeka Street Commercial Vehicle and Trailer Parking, first and second reading.
Mr. Dion, over to you for the intro.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. St. John neighborhood streets are sometimes used by residents to park their vehicles when they don't have access to sufficient off-street parking. Typically, these residents have cars, trucks, SUVs, vans, something small like that. The presence of on-street parking by these smaller vehicles are typically acceptable to people in the neighborhood. A unique situation has arisen on Topeka Street and a couple of the connecting streets in the Old East where a concentration of larger commercial trucks and utility trailers associated with operations at a business have been parking on the street for extended periods of time. Restricted street width and negative quality of life impacts to residents have resulted. The majority of area residents, confirmed through a survey, are supportive of a proposed new section of the city's traffic bylaw that would prohibit parking of commercial vehicles and trailers on the impacted streets. Residents' parking needs would remain unimpacted. Temporary parking for up to 30 minutes for deliveries by commercial vehicles to area residents would still be permitted. With the circumstances on Topeka and the surrounding blocks being so unique, it's not expected that the new bylaw provision will be used on many further streets in the future. With this description and the report before you, pending further questions from members of council, staff would ask that first and second readings of the proposed bylaw amendment be endorsed by council. I'm happy to take any questions, and Director O'Reilly is here to answer them for you.
Thank you. Deputy, you have a question?
Yes, Your Worship. When I look at this report, I mean, it's a good report, Tim, a lot of work went into it and everything, but I'm trying to save you some work in the future. Okay? And I think that, when we see a situation like this, why don't we, instead of trying to pick streets that are complaining about it, why don't we just say, no 40-foot tractor trailers or construction vehicles or anything else parked on city streets in the neighborhoods, we won't tolerate it. Because people are going to see this and they're going to say, hey, I got the same issue. I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and get them to do the same here. And it could, snowball. And the other thing I look at is, well, okay, I can't park my truck on this street anymore. I'm going to go around the corner and park on that street. Sure, it's an extra block for me to walk, but I'm obeying the law. Anyway, just get your comments on that.
Sure.
Thanks.
So I guess a couple of fronts before council, we suggest council consider it citywide. First of all, every street that this would apply to would have to have on-street signage installed, which of course comes at a cost, especially if you're looking at it across the entire city. There's enforcement considerations. This is a 30-minute park requirement, so you'd have to have enforcement there in order to see the trucks parked before and after 30 minutes. We didn't do community-wide consultation as part of this initiative. We were targeted with the affected blocks to make sure that there was support. And I guess again, I've been in this position now since 2008, and I can probably count on my hand the number of situations across the city that are anywhere near this much of an issue. There are plenty of places around St. John where residents park a large truck in isolation on a city street. Some impacts to the neighbors, but not significant in terms of impacting quality of life. There are a number of mechanic shops around St. John which actually park some of their vehicles, including heavy equipment, on the street while they're working on other vehicles. So all that considered, if you apply something like this across the city, you may be impacting some property owners that aren't really causing too much of an issue for their neighbors by parking the occasional commercial vehicle. This is a very unique situation. I've never seen anything like this in terms of the community concern and the number of commercial vehicles parked on Topeka and the surrounding streets. It's very, very unique. So with all that considered, I'd recommend against a citywide application. In this case here, that's why we did extend the parking restriction out beyond just Topeka Street, because we knew there's a chance that this one property owner could start to park the vehicles out far beyond. It becomes a certain stage where it becomes inconvenient for them to do that, frankly, right? Where they'd have to walk the couple of blocks to get back to that property. Certainly we'll watch it, and if it becomes an issue on surrounding blocks, we'll consider it in terms of additions. But a citywide application, just with it being so unique, wouldn't recommend that. But again, if there are unique situations, we have to consider those and bring those back to council in the future.
Thank you, Tim. I just a follow up. I just think that, I didn't realize that they're that few and far between because there was so many calls on this one, and we had another one a couple of years ago that we dealt with, so that's what I was thinking of. But, and again, like, I mean, because you have a law in place, if the guy's parking his truck and going in for lunch at his house, I'm not suggesting that he get a ticket for it, but I'm just saying that it would prevent some other, anyway, a conversation for another day. Great work, good report, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Councillor Stewart, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director O'Reilly, my understanding, this has been going on for some time. We've responded to several complaints. How long from the time that we started talking about this until today, till we get this bylaw passed? That's my first question. I got another one.
Oh, okay.
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure. I would say a couple of years.
Couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years. So what we're trying to do in this case was try to find the best solution to resolution. I worked a lot with our Growth Community Services Department to find out if there was something related to the adjacent property in terms of land use requirements. We struck out on that. And then we had to find the appropriate wording of the traffic bylaw amendment that would work in this case. Because again, we didn't have a law like this, so it took some time to actually get the appropriate wording that would deal with the matter at hand appropriately without impacting the residents around it. And then, of course, we did do our consultation with the community, which took a couple of months as well. Again, very unique. Hopefully, we don't have to address these very often. But yes, I think it's been a couple of years since we first became aware of the issue.
So obviously, that's been a long time. That's very frustrating for the residents there, but I'm sure when you did the consultation, they were all pretty much unanimous about this. My second question, how long after tonight that we pass this before you can get a bylaw officer in there and put a fine on that resident?
So we're not presuming third reading because that'll happen in 2 weeks, but we have taken the steps to get signs ordered and get poles ready to put in the ground. And basically, as soon as third reading happens, assuming it happens in 2 weeks' time, get the poles in the ground, the signs up, and we have our enforcement team on the ready to start walking the beat the day after.
So I get it. It's a slow-moving process. It takes time. And in the meantime, this gentleman who I've talked to several times about it, he's moving to Kingston Peninsula and taking his problem up there at some point in time. But it would be nice because he's leaving a bad taste with other residents in the city that you can get away with this just because you want to push hard enough and ignore the rules. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I'm going to go up to Councillor Radwan. I think you're next there, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. So I just wanted to really make a comment. So thank you, first of all, Director O'Reilly. Yes, there's quite a few of us, I think, that got complaints about this issue. But I mean, what I loved about your report, and it has taken a while, but I think this has been really hard for staff to navigate. You know, it's not an easy situation for sure. And unfortunately, there are some restrictions legally that make it difficult, I think, to navigate some of these things. But what I really appreciated in this report is you reaching out to the residents to seeing what is actually going to work for their neighborhood. Because you could have gone ahead and just stuck a bylaw in place and, you know, it might have caused a lot of havoc for the neighbors as well. So I'm really happy with your report. I'm happy with the way that you did handle this. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that staff are having to deal with these issues. And I would hope in the future that businesses will do business in commercial areas and that we don't have these problems in the future. And frankly, we just all need to be good neighbors. So thanks a lot, Director O'Reilly. I know you've done a lot of work on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe, over to you.
Yeah, Tim, like I got another situation very similar, right? It's not in one of the streets you named. It's a tractor trailer that has a complete dump, a large tractor trailer, which is blocking. So will this bylaw, if it passes third reading, we use that as a stick to these other people?
Yeah, if they're parked on the streets in which we have the bylaw in place, if it's a commercial vehicle, it can't be parked there for more than 30 minutes.
This is very similar, except it isn't East St. John, but it's not one of the streets that you mentioned. And I understand why you mentioned those streets, but you know, I thank you too for bringing this to a head finally. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like that's it, Director O'Reilly, and I'm going to pass it over to the clerk for the motions required.
Thank you. two motions required for this bylaw: approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
Approve first reading by title. Councillor Sullivan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto.
Okay, and now I need a motion to approve the second reading by title. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto.
Next item, please, City Clerk.
Next is 10.4, a traffic bylaw amendment with respect to residential parking permit fee increase.
Okay, gotta get to and this one is going over to Mr. Dion as well. For the intro, over to you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening is the first and second reading of an amendment to the city's traffic bylaw that would see a fee for residential parking change from $60 a year to $75 a year. These fees have not been adjusted for many years, and the modest adjustment is proposed to better reflect the cost of administering the program. Over the next year, the City of St. John will be completing a parking study. The study will include a full review of the current parking services. It will have a focus on the South Central Peninsula, including current parking practices and capacities, and inform future decisions around pricing and future supply options as the city continues to experience strong population growth. The study will seek input from a wide range of stakeholders and be presented to council in advance of any significant changes. And I'll turn it back over to you, Your Worship, for the required readings. And should there be any questions, Jill Good is here as the operations manager.
Thank you. Okay, if there's anyone has any questions for Jill Good, and if not, I'll get the clerk, I'll get you to sorry, Councillor Radwan, I forget to look up there. Over to you.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let you know why I've decided to vote against this one. I know that it's $15 a month, but for some people right now, I think that means a lot. I think the timing is really hard, and in the grand scheme of things for the city, this means $15,000. I wish that we were putting this off a year until the parking research is getting done, but so I'm going to vote against this. I just don't think that people can afford to be squeezed any more than they already are.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a yearly fee, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how come we didn't go to just the cost recovery of 65 if it's like instead it's 75?
Just with the increases that we've seen, we haven't increased since 2019. So just knowing, like, because like a couple weeks ago, you would have seen the report for the Corps of Commissioners that doesn't align with the timing of the permit. So just anticipating further increases for enforcement to come, and then the cost of materials for ticketing, the system that we use, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. What I will say about it, and I live down there, and I don't use that, I don't need that, but for anyone who hasn't read the kit that's out in the public, in 1987, 2004, the price was $60 a year, which is $5 a month. And then as they got more people onto buying them, they reduced the price. And in 2019, we ended up back at the $60 mark. So it's $5 a month. This increase will go to $6.25 a month. So, at the end of the day, what I'm finding is that with more parkers on the streets, they're looking for more services. They want more snow bans because they want the snow cleared. I mean, if you're spending $5 a month to park your car, you want that spot cleared away. So, I find like I said, as we get more people on it, it's not that the cost should be reduced because we're trying to provide more service because there's more voices that are calling to say we need this done or that done. So I am very supportive of this. So I will, I'll have to send that over to you, City Clerk, for the motions that we need.
Thank you. This one's similar to the last one. 2 motions required, approval first reading by title, approval of second reading by title.
I'll take a motion for first reading by title. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, sorry, go ahead. I know you have to read that.
Just for the record, there was 1 nay vote.
Oh, sorry,
Councillor Rodwan.
One.
Sorry. No, actually, Mayor, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that this was annually, so I'm voting in favor of it. I thought it was a monthly fee.
No, it's going from $5 to $6.25 a month now.
I may have missed it because when I used to buy mine uptown, it was a monthly charge. So anyway, I'm sorry for that. I'm voting in favor
Yeah,
of
this
it.
is the
So thank
residential
you.
permit.
Perfect. No, thank you.
Okay, so the record will reflect a positive vote from Councillor Rodwan. Thank you. And another motion required for reading by title.
Second reading by title, Second reading by title. The deputy and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
I just have to read it twice. A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto. And again, a bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting traffic on streets in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next is 10.5, St. John's Skateboard Bylaw Amendment, first and second reading.
Okay, and this one is also going over to Director Dion. Over to you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening for first and second reading is a proposed bylaw changes to the St. John Skateboard Bylaw. These changes will help in renaming the Station 1 Skateboard Park to the Station 1 All Wheels Park. By adopting a more inclusive name, the park aims to reflect its commitment to accommodating various wheeled activities, such as skateboarding, scootering, and biking. This renaming initiative not only acknowledges the evolving interests and preferences of the community, but also emphasizes the park's role as a welcoming space for individuals of all ages and skill sets. With that, Your Worship, I'll turn it back over to you. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Not seeing any, so City Clerk, I'll pass to you for the motions required.
2 motions required, approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
First reading by title, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed, sorry. Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the use of skateboards and other recreational equipments within the city of St. John, bylaw number M27.
Okay, and I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor Radwan and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the use of skateboards and other recreational equipments within the city of St. John, bylaw number M27.
Sounds good. So lots of wheels will be available. We'll be able to go down there now. That's perfect. All right, City Clerk, over to you for the next item.
Next is under committee reports, item 13.1, the Civic Commemoration Committee Commemorative Design Parker's Corner.
Councillor Hickey, over to you.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Great report tonight coming out of the Civic Commemoration Committee. The recommendations in the kit. Council is not new to this initiative and has had this discussion before, and will remember a motion that left council and directed it to the committee, which would offer recognition to Parker Cogswell, both for his contribution to his neighborhood as well as the community at large at the intersection of Carmarthen and Mecklenburg streets. I want to particularly thank Andre Gallant, Parker's partner, for his advocacy in the community, the rest of the neighborhood association in the community, as well as Judith Meinert Thomas, who will also get some recognition through Parker's Corner in the display. I'll also add that this plan has been endorsed by Pride St. John. I want to thank them for their cooperation. And also thank a couple of members of their staff through Kate Wilcott, our Arts and Culture Coordinator, and Kay Canyon Dula, who's also with us today. If there's any questions, Kay is our manager of inclusion and community, as we all know. Recommendations are in the kit. If anyone has any questions, here to answer them.
No questions, I don't see. Are you going to move that recommendation for us, Councillor?
So moved.
Excellent, thank you. And Councillor Killen is going to second that. So on the question, or do you have a question, Councillor Radwan? Are you good? No. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you. Next item is under general correspondence. It's item 15.1, a letter by Friends of Rockwood Park with respect to 16th.
Are we doing 510?
Sorry.
510, Councillor Harris's item. Is that next?
How was that removed?
510 was, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that. My apology, Your Worship. Yet item 510 was removed from consent agenda, and that would now become 14.1.
Okay.
And that is a response to proposed motion from November 27th.
Right, Councillor Harris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So this came out of, trying to get ahead of the curve on some of the emerging conversation that's happening around zoning in the country. And certainly I can appreciate that staff have put in here, some anticipating clauses, if you will, that we are going to look at some of these revisions around zoning. But I guess my question to staff would be, at what point, so let's look at the parking piece. The recommendation is to wait until we've done a more holistic parking review. My statement at the time was that in order to keep up pace with the changes that are existing, that we need to remove the red tape that exists on our end for developers around parking minimums. And I guess I don't understand why a parking review would have to be done in order for this body to kind of make a set direction in that way. Because at the end of the day, PAC has to review the application, as well as this body has to review the application. We always have opportunities and off-roads, or off-ramps, if you will, if a development is being proposed to us that has these glaring weaknesses around parking in them. And at the other end of the spectrum, we see developers like Mr. Brito, who's come to this body in recent history, who has suggested that they are reassessing actively what level of parking they're providing tenants in these uptown developments that they're pursuing, because lifestyles are changing pretty dramatically. And it's not something that people necessarily want, and it incurs a pretty large cost, especially when you have to park underground. So in my opinion, I guess the risk assessment here is that we maintain our status quo, which brings us, into a place where we're asking developers to pay for parking that they may or may not need for their tenants in the future. And I don't see the advantage there for us. I don't see how that signals the broader community that we recognize the urgency around creating housing, and that we're willing to do our part to take the handcuffs off developers and folks to pursue that delivery. So yeah, I'll send it to staff on the parking minimum one. I also wanted to talk about another point, but yeah.
CAO, can I send that to you?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe I'll just pass it over to Jennifer Kirchner to start things off, and I can chime in as appropriate. Thank you.
Jennifer, over to you. Sorry, I didn't see you up there.
No worries. Thank you, Your Worship. City staff took a great deal of thought into the different proposals suggested. And we really tried to take a look at what we are seeing as the patterns with development. So currently, we work with a lot of developers through the pre-application stage all the way to development applications. For the most part, what we're seeing is even if there are no parking requirements in the Uptown, for instance, a good swath of the Central Peninsula is parking exempt. We are not seeing developers actually moving forward with this. They're typically providing almost all of what you normally see as a one-to-one parking ratio. So we are seeing developers still hinging to the fact that for them to market their units, there typically needs to be more of a parking emphasis in order to provide those opportunities to potential tenants who might be looking at what would be the best fit for them currently, whether it is a unit with parking versus a unit that doesn't provide parking. We're quite cognizant when we do have these discussions with developers. We are very open to discussing reductions to parking when they request it. Staff fairly regularly process development officer variances to reduce parking, particularly in redevelopment of properties in some of our more established neighborhoods, where we might reduce the parking down to 0 stalls, depending on what they're able to provide on-site or not, and depending what the capacity is for on-street parking in the area. I think we're cognizant that although they may not be able to provide parking on-site and may not market that to tenants, the reality is a lot of people still have vehicles and they would need to find an alternative spot to park, which, depending on the neighborhood, is either on city streets or is in public paid parking lots, either owned by the city or by private owners. We also take into account the fact that we do have a fairly high disability rate in the province, some of the highest numbers in Canada. So with that coupled with an aging population, there are a lot of people who do require access to vehicles or have regular appointments with people who come in vehicles, that they need to make sure that they can get those accesses in order to maintain an independent lifestyle. So as soon as you start reducing those requirements or eliminating it, we run into risks of development not providing accessible parking stalls on site. As well, some of the grant funding available through other levels of government do have requirements for certain levels of parking, in particular accessible stalls, but sometimes there is a ratio they need to provide. So we're not really seeing that decrease. Why we are kind of encouraging the parking study, it provides us an idea of realistically what the demand would still be for parking. If we were to move into a position where no developer needs to provide any parking, there will still be vehicles. And the question will be, where will those vehicles park? Do our streets have the capacity? Uptown and the Central Peninsula does have public parking lots, but other areas of the city do not have public parking lots available, or they may have restrictions for on-street parking. So we don't want to create a scenario where essentially a lot of development we're getting would have no parking available, period. That would change what we might expect. We may, in those scenarios, require or expect more developers to create standalone parkades in order to offset these types of development, which is essentially just trading one type of parking in one format for parking in another. And as well, when we make major changes to our zoning bylaw, we do have to do a certain level of due diligence when preparing the reports and then submitting the materials for review with the province. So major changes to our municipal plan, as well as major overhauls to our zoning bylaw, we would have to do a certain level of study to indicate that this is a move that will not detrimentally impact certain segments of our population. And to make sure that we're still, respecting those and can provide that information if our decisions or recommendations are under scrutiny. And that is a requirement of anyone who's a professional planner to provide that in order for us to sign off on these types of amendments. So I think that may have provided some clarity.
Well, I mean, you're giving me a lot of information, I guess, but not all of it seems relevant here. I guess to poke back here a bit, would the elimination of parking minimums actually require this high level of due diligence to submit that change to the province? Because
It would. We would be completely changing how the vast majority of our zones function. And if we were to suddenly go to zero parking being provided across the city, it would drastically change how a city is designed and functions. It would have impact on much broader things such as public parking, but also how functional our transit system is, how those transit routes are laid out in order to serve populations. And as well, not every application comes before council. If there's no rezoning required, there would be no consideration for whether or not the site is an appropriate one, or whether you might require parking. So if a property is zoned and you didn't require parking, they could be located in a place that has no access to transit, but there would be no way for staff to require additional requirements of parking if we require zero as a standard.
There's Section 59s.
Not if the zoning is already in place, there would be no mechanism for that. They would be able to build as of right with zero parking provided, even if it's like a 200-unit building.
And I guess the challenge here for this body, and I'll kick it away here, Mayor, if anybody else wants to comment on this, is do we want to be the body that is providing that minimum? Because there's no guarantee that we're creating accessible parking units, or things to that nature just by having a parking minimum in place. That doesn't mean that somebody's offering that. And as far as I know, that's not something that we have in an inclusionary zone. We don't have an inclusionary zoning policy in place. So therefore, we don't have any way of enforcing a developer to build accessible units by a certain amount that, exceeds or maybe meets the demand at which we would have with the higher level. Because I agree, we do have a higher level of disabled people and an aging population. But so I guess, this is something I think a more broad conversation needs to happen around this table more intentionally, because in my mind, from where I sit, I am happy to let the market and the folks that are building right now understand who their demographic is and who they need to build for, and bring that to us as needed, rather than us telling them they need to jump through 4 hoops first, pay the extra to design a development that has these parking minimums achieved, rather than us be able to do that in another way. So maybe it's not as of right zero parking minimum. Maybe there's something we can do to massage that point. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's a conversation we've had at this table, and maybe it warrants a broader conversation, Your Worship, depending on what others think, because we didn't even get into why we wouldn't provide as of right for high density and in mixed use, in commercial zoning areas. Like, I understand what staff is saying here, but we're not seeing the cost represented in this report to doing the status quo. And that's the problem. The cost is pretty apparent when we see people in our streets, when we see people choosing other cities to build in. And we're not modeling that here. And I can't look at this report and coherently endorse it when I can't look at the cost of doing nothing. Because this report says, hey, we're already on it, and we don't need to do these things for certain periods of time until the parking review is done, or until we've done these other sections that are going to come with the affordable housing, the housing funding that we just received from the federal government. But that's going to take time. And that zoning review is 2 years, potentially a year in the making here. So it's difficult to be able to really make a decision about proposals like this, which are alternative policies trying to get us ahead of the curve. But yeah, anyway.
Councillor Hickey, did you have a comment or a question for Jennifer Kirchner?
Just a quick one, Your Worship. Thank you. Through you to Jennifer, lots of reference to the Housing Accelerator Plan. Are we on track to meet commitments that Council had agreed to at our last conversation?
We have been working on our work plan and are currently undertaking the staffing necessary to continue with the different projects that have been earmarked, but we are moving forward. There's no major delays at this point. So we are continuing with our commitments there. Acting Director Dobbelstein may be able to provide a bit more information about some of the items that are more broadly outside the scope of community planning.
Okay, I'm just checking. Councillor Radwan, your hand's not up, is it? Just in case? Okay, sounds good. All right. Who else? What? Oh, sorry.
Through your worship, just to tack on to what our community planning manager just stated, we are on track currently. A lot of the amendments to the zoning bylaw, which we're viewing as sort of, I don't want to call them housekeeping amendments, but they're really about cutting red tape and accelerating development. You're going to start seeing those start to be rolled out to you and the public beginning this summer. Everything ranging from increasing density to what is the scope of PAC to how quickly we can get decisions made at this table. And this will all accelerate that movement, and we are on track to date.
Good, thank you. Deputy?
Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Harris may be right. It requires a deeper conversation. So tonight I just move for information purposes.
Okay,
Get this
move to
passed.
receive for information. Councillor Sullivan? On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. Thank you, Councillor and Deputy. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next is item 15.1 under general correspondence. It's a letter from Friends of Rockwood Park, request to present regarding 1671 Sandy Point Road. There's a recommendation from staff to refer this matter to the Growth Committee for presentation.
Okay, I'll take them over. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.2, a citizen letter regarding 1671 Sandy Point Road, recommendation to receive for information.
Move to receive for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy? Seconder, Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
15.3, another citizen letter regarding 1671 Sandy Point Road with a recommendation to receive for information.
Take a mover to receive for information. Councillor Radwan and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if these letters can be received for information, but also forwarded. I know we've got them, but as a package deal for when the presentation takes place.
Yeah, I think
for
that's
Growth
what the
Committee.
plan is.
Thank you.
To go in with the, yeah. Okay, so I've got a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry, opposed. Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 15.4, a citizen letter regarding Rockwood Park, recommendation received for information.
Got a recommendation received for information. Councillor Stewart and the Deputy. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And the final one's 15.5, citizen letter, again regarding Rockwood Park. Recommendation is to receive for information.
Councillor Radwan and the Deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, it looks like that's it. So over to you, Councillor Lowe. Oh, no.
Two items
Oh,
from
you're
Committee
sorry.
of the Whole, Your Worship.
17.1 and 2.
First item is 17.1 from Committee of the Whole, and this is with respect to catalytic multipurpose recreation facility. And the resolution on that matter would be resolved that Council approve the withdrawal of up to $200,000 from the reserves to undertake a feasibility study for the development of the proposed multi-purpose recreational facility.
Take a mover. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And item 17.2 is a Committee of the Whole recommendation with respect to termination of the lease City Market with Slocum and Ferris. And the resolution is resolved that the City of St. John terminate the lease with 731360 NB Limited, DBA Slocum and Ferris, installs 1617 and ancillary spaces effective March 19th, 2024. And that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the documents necessary to effect the termination.
Councillor Sullivan and the Deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now I'm at the end of the agenda. Councillor Lowe, over to you. Motion to adjourn. Deputy, you seconding that? Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good night.